Everyone, welcome back again to Spiritual Growth Tarot and Astrology. And this reading, as you can see, is will be for astrology, for astrological purposes. I'm going to take you through what the partial lunar eclipse that's coming up on May 5th in the USA, how that may play out for you in your chart. You know, the certain specific areas of your life are devoted to each house. So I'm going to take you through all the houses, and as long as you know your chart, it'll be accurate, but you really need to know your chart and those degrees on the cusps. Okay, all right, so without further ado, let me swap out cameras here and bring you over my table. Okay, hold on. Okay, so first I wanted to let you know that I do have a video that's up for the week of April 30th to May 6th, so you might want to watch that. Just because I went deeply into this Pluto squaring the nodes, and plus bringing in Eris, Jupiter, and the North Node. We've got a triple square here, like 3 times the fun. But with Pluto being up here in the T-square, it's a very powerful effect. And so I gave so much information in that, I don't want to reiterate it here, other than I definitely have to bring in the clarity as to what exactly it means when you have a lunar eclipse, which is a full moon. It's always, whenever we have, well, the eclipse can either be really, really close to the nodes, and then it would be, a full, total lunar eclipse. This is a penumbra, which is the same as saying partial. It's a partial lunar eclipse. So, but it's always the full moon. Right, when we have a full moon, it's always in exact opposition to the sun. So we have both luminaries in aspect somewhere in our charts, right? So that's what I'm going to do, is take you through the different houses. So you do have to know your chart. So basically, all of these aspects, and like I said, I went into it deeply already in the weekly video. So feel free to look there for all that information. But for this, all intents and purposes, I suppose is the way to say it, it's important to know that we are releasing something with this full moon lunar eclipse. And what we're releasing has the flavor of Scorpio. So what we could be, or it could be, doesn't have to be a release, but I really felt clearly that that's mostly what it's about this time. It could also be that something comes to fruition to the point that there's a trajectory change in your life, a life path change. Or if you've been on your path, like a lot of us have for a long time, you'll just have more strength, a deeper level of conviction, where you'll dig your heels down, and it's like a pivot point where I know who I am, I know where I am, I know what I'm good at, I know what I'm not good at. Basically these things of much more deeply knowing yourself. And because of that, you're headed in a direction that you have more self-confidence, and you know what you want. And all of that is here, with the North Node and Mercury right there close to the sun, but especially with the fact that Jupiter is opposing the South Node. There's a lot here with that that is placing us on a much more, on our path in a much more courageous way. Now, there are emotional adjustments happening to the full moon, because we do have the quincunx, and then we also have a quincunx coming off of Pluto to Venus. So basically all of that comes together to say that we have learned something in such something that is so deeply profound and meaningful in our lives, either about ourselves. I think probably all profound learning comes from the inner realms, right? And But, it can be outer events too that lead you in a different way. It can be a friend or a loved one that says, hey, have you ever thought of this? And then you're suddenly that. Or something comes out and you're looking at it, it could be an ad or something. Like, I'll never forget when I saw the first iPhone ad on TV. It was, I don't know what they used to have. Remember when Steve Jobs, they probably still do them all, but what did he call it? Like the yearly conference of some Apple conference. I don't know. They would show all the new things that we would be looking forward to, I suppose. And I'll never forget that one day watching that going, oh, now this changes everything. A lot of people had Blackberries, which were great, but you didn't have the ability to do what you could do on an iPhone, right? And of course, all the Android phones caught up, and that's all great too. But it can be something like that where something has changed, you have learned, you've clued in to some new pattern, and there's an adjustment that can empower you even more greatly. With Pluto and Aquarius, of course, you're headed towards more love with your brothers and sisters, like brotherhood, sisterhood type of energy. And new inventions. I mean, Aquarius rules the internet, rules astrology, rules technology, all things that are good for humanity. But then again, there's the dark side of Aquarius too. And I'm not going to go into that because I want you to focus on the good. Because I just don't think you'd be watching astrology, honestly, if you weren't someone who... unless you're using it as just a form to try to control your life, which that'll bite you in the behind because it's boring. If you're not into the mystery of life, you are bored. If that's the thing, is if you knew everything that was going to happen in every given minute of the day, you would be unbelievably bored. There's nothing to look forward to without that wonder, without the awe of life. So I think the most important things to come through with this lunar eclipse, this full moon lunar eclipse, all of the massive amounts of opportunity here. We have the aspect of the architect from Pluto. We have this trine going on, sextile from Pluto to Neptune. And then also, this aspect of the architect with the trine being involved comes in to Mars. So, being on our spiritual path, spiritual guidance and support that puts us in the realm of dissolving all old boundaries of power structures, and as long as we're headed towards the light. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be hard work. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy at all, because it never is, right? But there's a lot of motivation to go in the direction of listening to all of your deepest inner workings, and then the light is shining there with the sun conjunct Uranus. And because, see, the deal is when it comes to eclipses, I have really strong rules around the way I read eclipses in people's charts, because I don't go with anything outside of, as I've learned over the years, and it was Bernadette Brady that I learned this from in her book. I think it's like called The Eagle and the Lark or something. It's like predictive astrology. But she only uses 2 degrees of an orb between any other planets. 2.5 for conjunctions, 2 degrees for oppositions. She doesn't pay any attention to the squares. So in your chart, in your natal chart, you're going to have this full moon lunar eclipse, 14, almost just 2 more minutes, and it'd be 15 degrees Scorpio. So look to your chart and see where this is playing out. And you'll have these 2 houses where you are, you're going to feel the effects. Now, with the lunar eclipse, with lunar, it's more inner, right? The external forces came through with the total solar eclipse that we had on April 19th, April 20th, depending on where you are. And that was at that very nth degree, that late degree, 29 degrees, anaretic degree of Aries. Now this is a Taurus Scorpio eclipse, but lunar eclipse. So wherever pretty much 15 degrees Scorpio is in your natal chart, there can be a fruition of something coming full circle and in full bloom, or it can be a release, and both. Just think of the way, a flower, maybe the new moon is the seed, and then there's the bud, and then it starts opening, and by the time we have the full moon, we have a full-blown flower. And it's like, whoa. So it can be that, but then also, when a flower, something so beautiful and delicate, and I'm speaking in terms of, beauty and rebirth with the Taurus-Scorpio axis, what happens is that once the flower is in full bloom, it begins a process of transformation, transmutation into something else. And the seeds, I can't remember all the names of the parts of a flower, or the pollen, there's the pistil, is that what it's called? Pistil? I can't remember, but anyway, the pollen from the flower is like so open and ripe for the bees, and then there's that fertilization, but there is also that letting go. So what is it that we need to release? And most of all, if there are resentments, old resentments, we're definitely going to need to let go of that, and that would put us in the realm of like the negative aspect of Scorpio. But the positive aspect is trusting yourself and regenerating your life, because you know who you are and you know which way you want to go. And so there you go. There you are. And we have so much support here with the Sun conjunct Uranus. So this is pretty much also 15 degrees, and then 41 there. We are within that 2.5 degree orb that I like to adhere to when it comes to the eclipses. So put the moon at 15 degrees somewhere in your chart, and now I'm going to take you through the different houses. And so if 15 degrees Scorpio lands in your first house, you're going to be working with that 1st to 7th polarity. So the first house is you. It's everything that you magnetize, because it's you, because you magnetize, we each magnetize our life experiences based on what's going on within us, right? And it can be even your health, it can be just your most personal parts of your life, your daily, just all your personal affairs, and also new beginnings. Right? So you could have a new beginning of all things Scorpio. And when it comes to Scorpio, we're wanting to have more trust in our lives, more intimate levels of connection with people. Scorpio also, because it rules the 8th house, it's also the sharing, the resources that we share with other people. And it can have to do with, death, rebirth, things like that. You could go through an intense death and rebirth, which is really just translates into big change, because there's no such thing as death. No. We always move on to something else. Like there really is no end and no beginning. There might be an end of a painful relationship, but then that sets you up for a brand new opening for a new relationship. So relationship is always going to be a part of our interface with life. And relationships are mirrors. So they can help us grow, right? Okay, so from the 1st to the 7th, that is the relationship house. So the 7th house, so even though Scorpio, rules the 8th house, the polarity of the 1st to 7th for you would be, and you can't look at this chart here because this is set up as a 0 degrees. It would have to be, put these transits into your chart, or just know that I'm speaking to a first house Scorpio, 15 degree Scorpio here, or even if it's the ascendant, then you could be magnetizing this fruition and this release and this whole new life. But it's also going to affect your 7th house of relationships, and the 7th house has to do with others, partnership, love, partnerships of all type. It could be just an agreement, it could be a contract, it could be a very close personal relationship, it could be a marriage, it could be a divorce. But it's basically the way, we interact with each other, the close relationships anyway. The people you hang out with at work, the people that you Zoom with on, weekly meetings or something, right? It's how you deal with the public. Yeah. And it can be your allies. It can be sometimes... what would be another word instead of ally? Be your adversaries, or not. It would be, I guess, the people that you might feel competitive with, like a rival type of a person. Can be that. So you're going to have a few months of those issues, and it'll bring things up. Now, if this conjuncts one of your personal planets, I only go with... I don't tend to look at, well, it can be, if you want, like if it's within a couple of degrees, let's say your moon to Saturn, or I'm sorry, if this eclipse, if this full moon at 15 degrees Scorpio is on your, 15 degree Taurus Saturn, then yeah, there could be some serious business you're getting down to. It could be a serious relationship. It could be a serious love relationship. It could be a marriage, things like that. But I tend to just focus on the sun and the moon because those are the main, luminaries. And don't read too much into the others. And definitely I don't look at, when it comes to eclipses, I do not look at squares. Unless it's exact, then I might, but then only it would be the square to the sun. Like, let's say you have a square going on from the moon to the full moon eclipse to your sun, to your natal sun, then I might do it. I would look at that. Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and go into the second. So if the full moon lunar eclipse is happening in your 2nd to 8th house, then the 2nd house is what you value. It is your fluid money that can flow through you or come to you. These are, assets that, and in our personal belongings that we can either sell or take in and bring in. They are our possessions that we can move around, basically. It's not like our house that you have to sell, something like that. It's not like your car that you have to sell. It's your liquid money. And then the 8th house is, back to what I was saying before, is besides, the house of transformation and all things psychic, and all things considering death and rebirth, things like that. We're in that realm of inheritances and your partner's resources and all of our financial dealings or interests, I guess I could say, that are joint. So that you're in the realm of like stock market if you're into that. It's also the house of insurance, and how we manage our resources, how we manage our sustainability in life, how we manage our just anything that has to do with resources, basically. Now, it's also the house, the 8th house is also geared towards how we recycle things and how we, change things up to make them work in a new way or give things away, right? It's also the house of sex. It's also the house of reincarnation, which I also look at the 12th with that. But primarily the 8th is a really strong house for reincarnation. So you might have some... It might be a good time for past life regressions or past life work, or dream time might bring through, especially with this Neptune trine Mars and then up to the moon. It's very possible because this pattern is in place in the cosmos, right? But there could be dream time downloads and meditation downloads with Neptune in Pisces holding space there for all of us to be on our spiritual path. So now I'm going to go to the 3rd and 9th houses. So if this basically 15 degrees of Scorpio, lunar full moon, or lunar eclipse, full moon, lunar eclipse, is lining up from your 3rd to the 9th. The 3rd house is, it's like your neighborhood, it's your siblings, it's the way we communicate, it's our capacity for rationalizing and thinking. It's the way we tend to express ourselves mentally, like you're just thinking something through and talking it out. It's like that. There can be more depth coming through that way and more focus into whatever you're needing to honor as an accomplishment, and it's like back to the flower, full bloom flower analogy. It's like, look at that. Boy, that's just, I'm so glad that's there, right? Excuse me. Versus maybe letting go, the letting go and the holding on of what is the most beautiful. And a true letting go is a forgiveness in a way that there's not even really anything to forgive anymore, because you have come to full circle and know that even though maybe it was a very painful experience, that you're more whole because of it, because it did help you get to a deeper experience of your power. So okay. And then up to the 9th house. Now, the 9th house is really cool, too, because that's our house of divination. It's our house of what we believe in. So you'd be in that polarity of learning new things, and then, now that I know that, I believe in this, whatever this is, right? It's a house that rules the way we can think in a much broader way. It's also the house of publishing, media of any type. It's also our house of foreign countries, courts of law, people that do advertising, marketing. That rules the 9th house. Foreign countries and basically journeys that go long ways. It's also the house of the shaman, right? Shamanic journeys. And bringing together patterns between the 3rd and the 9th that can help you move along the path. 9th house is also really, because it's ruled by Sag, it's also really good for people that are good with telling stories and reading stories out loud and recalling the way it was and reminding us. It's like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. It's our house of universities. What else? Relatives of, if you're married or in partnership, it's the house of them. So they might be there in a stronger way in your life for a few months. And, it's also the house, I always forget this, it's a house of large animals. So it's often been associated with racehorses. So horses especially, but it could be racehorses if you like to do that. I myself, I don't know. The horses are such beautiful animals. I know they love to run and play, but the whole industry itself with racehorses, I think, can be abusive. So I'm kind of not so keen to that. but I'm not here to judge if that's what you're into. So anyway, 4th to the 10th. 4th house is the house of home, and 10th house is the house of career. The 4th house is also the house of the past. It's also the house of our emotional foundation, our family life, anything to do on the home front. Now this would be the house of real estate. It's also the house of our parents, any other property besides houses. It could be your parents' property that you're taking care of. It's a very psychic house where there's sensitivity and you know your real needs, and if it has to do with taking care of your parents or grandparents, it's right there, I mean, and to have, if you had the full moon there could be something that comes up and it's like, oh, okay, this is on the table and we're dealing with it. It's also my house for getting inside of inner child work that needs to be done, and I see that as something very beautiful. What else? Let's see. I think into the 4th house. It's a very feeling-oriented house. It's the house that represents not so much both parents, but well, it can be. It can be that the 10th house is more father relationship. But what if you grew up without a mom and you had a different type of a caretaker? Maybe you lost your mom at an early age. This would then put your dad in this house, right? So, or what if you were raised in a home with a working mom and dad was the one that took care of the kids? Because we have those situations nowadays. We have everything. And we probably had it way back when as well. But now we know so much more because everything's online. So anyway, 4th house of home, let's just call it parents and grandparents. It's a house of the past, most of all, and older years of life. And whether or not our real needs were met or not met, and how that was in our legacy, if you went through a very hard time because of your parents, you also have to wonder what they went through because of their grandparents. And then you start thinking about your grandparents and what they went through. And you keep thinking how hard it must have been way back when. And that's where the forgiveness comes in with the Scorpio, energy holding space there, where we can just truly let go. And then with the 10th house polarity, now that's our house of career. That's how we participate with life. It is our, professional and career, of course, but you could say also, the way you interact with the world. Anything to do with your business life, anything to do with how you're recognized in your community, and anything you've achieved in the past. It's where you can pat yourself on the back. And also your relationship with authority. Now, hopefully, of course, we love having protection, like police protection and other things, but hopefully you are your own authority. And you listen intently to your own spidey senses, your own psychic abilities, your own intuition, and that is the trajectory of, your life path. Now, if you're having any trouble at home, it will affect your career and vice versa. It's just the way it works. That there's no getting around that, of course. Just like if you're having issues with where your money's resourced, it's also going to affect your your personal finances. So we have to get those things really, in order, or we have to have those things in order. So let's see, what else? Let's move to the 5th house. Now, 5th house is our house of creative self-expression. It's our house of what we go towards for pleasure, and hopefully it's positive pleasure. It's our house of fun and games and recreation. It's our house. It can be, I've never been one to be too much into the whole courting and romance kind of a thing, but getting to know someone and being best friends first is always really great. Can't say I was that smart when I was younger, but man, live and learn. So fifth house has to do with love relationships, love affairs, romance, courtship, but all things that we get together with, in the outer world. So anything where we go out and have fun with, right? Any form of entertainment, any form of playing games, any hobbies, anything to do with your kids, of course, and especially your firstborn if you have more than one. But maybe you don't have any kids that you gave birth to at all, but you just love children, and maybe you're a teacher. You would get even more pleasure from that throughout this time period with the full moon lunar eclipse coming through in the fifth house, and then with the polarity of the 11th. And you may have to flip these dynamics around. Like it could come in the 11th and it goes to the 5th. It doesn't matter. So this is why I'm only going through the, first to the 7th, second to the 8th, third to the 9th, like that, right? So we don't have much further to go. Now, the 11th house is our house of goals and friendships, and the things that we like to hang out with, like the people, like you might belong to some organizations, and it's because you like hanging out with them, right? They mean something to you. You can recognize as that as being something that matters, and it's also the house of high society, or any type of society. Actually, it would be high society. I'm sorry, I don't think in those terms really, but society at large. Now, also, they would be any friendships and companions. It could be friends, just surface friendships, or it could be very deep friendships, especially with the Taurus-Scorpio polarity going on there. So you'd be having, like 3 to 6 months or so of a lot of making new friends and maybe finding your kindred spirits. The way you can move forward. Sorry if you can hear my stomach growling. I am kind of hungry. But anyway, there's more of an awareness that comes through the 11th house. When you have the polarity going from the 5th to the 11th, there might be more of an awareness as to what brings pleasure into your life, and who are those friends that you like hanging out with, and what are those groups that you like hanging out with. It's our house of goals and hopes and wishes, and who we cooperate with in order to meet those needs, because we're all interdependent upon each other, and we do need to honor those friendships, right? So it might be a time where you're much more creatively expressing yourself to your friends, and to your having interactions with those people that are in your groups, right? It's our house of group mindedness. So now I'll go from the 6th to the 12th. Now the 6th is our house of health, our house of daily details, our schedules, our work, and we like being useful, and we like having a healthy body. So it can be a new diet, or just a newfound sense of focusing in on your nutritional needs, better ways to take care of yourself. And the general, just daily details, right? And how efficient you can be. And you might find yourself more deeply efficient than you've ever been with Scorpio-Taurus access going on in those houses between the 6th to the 12th. And then also opening up with the 12th house, it's so open. that there's more connection to your source, the source of who you are, your source in yourself and in the spiritual realms, that you're not limited anymore, right? If you are going through any areas of your life where you feel very limited and bonded and stuck, and you're worried, and you feel, confined in some way, then those are the areas that you work on, sixth house work on, to release yourself from. And to have the Scorpio Taurus axis in there can be actually really beautiful. It's the 12th house is the house of compassion and all types of, those bigger institutions like hospitals and rest homes, but also it's a house of prisons and jails and not that I ever want to use this, but back in the old days it was like detention camps. So other parts of the world those things are still going on, but for the most part, I'll end with this, is that it's the house of self-undoing. It's also the house of karma, associated with all things karmic. So you can work, each one of us work with all the little daily details of life to circumvent the old, karma. Because I only look at karma as being the law of cause and effect. And it's basically, it's never as simple as you did this so you get that. It's not like that. It's much more, because it's spiritual law, and it's very flexible and varied. So it depends on each person. And it has to do with learning. And most of all, learning the false beliefs that have caused you to have an experience. So it might not be anything to do with, oh, I did this in a past, this is happening to me, so that means I must have done this in a past life. Well, you can always kind of wonder, and if you can even remember someone in this life that you did something to you wish you hadn't, then as long as you said you're sorry, and if they've crossed over, you've done that through the spiritual means, then there's never any reason to hold that harsh grudge upon yourself, because as long as you know, so here's my guide, as long as I know I would never do it again, there's no reason to not forgive myself, right? So if you think that people are going through bad things because they did something bad in the past, well, it could be, if we're talking about these dirty politicians and people who abuse their positions of power, yeah, that's the case. But then also know that those people eventually, in some lifetime, will be humiliated, and because their abuse will come up. And hopefully it's the lifetime where they can, work through it and change it, turn it around and change it for the good. But then again, a lot of people don't like change and resist change, and they just want to stay in control. And they usually, it's carried into the next life, and it sets up that next lifetime to experience pain, even more pain than they had in the past. So, but for each one of us, who's, I doubt that you're a dirty politician watching my video. So just think in terms for you personally as to what is it that might be a false belief? What might the false belief be that has caused this negative experience? And then you can turn it into a positive, because if you had a false belief that created a negative experience, you also have the power to change that false belief and turn it all around, which is what life is all about. And we can let life be a teaching vehicle for us. So, okay, well, other than that, I think I'm done, except for please, I would say listen to the weekly video, like I said, the one that went from April 30th to May 6th, because there's loads of information there. And actually, even the week before that, I went through a lot of, you know, my understandings, my experience with healing the soul. So anyway, with that, I'm just going to send you big hugs as always, and get this uploaded for you, and take good care. Bye.